Hello and welcome back to another Walking Dead video, and today I'll be ranking the top 10 worst episodes we got in 2023. In total we got 24 episodes this year, spread across 3 shows: Fear the Walking Dead Dead Sea, and The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. This year was lighter than the previous year because I had like 30 plus episodes, but we still got a good chunk of episodes this year, and next year I'll probably get even less. So let's dive right into this with number 10, Fear the Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 8. I personally do not hate this episode. This is the episode that brings back Charlie, and I think it redeems her quite well. However, this episode has issues with them being like, okay, we brought back Charlie and she survived irradiation, but you have all these other characters which apparently died off screen, or we just never saw them again. This episode does feel a little too late. You should have had this episode about season 6 at the latest, with this Charlie redemption arc, and a lot of action in this episode happens off screen, and it just really sucks because it shows how cheap Fear is now. They don't have the budget to do any fights, and the big build of this episode after you deal with Charlie, and the only good aspect of this episode is that Madison and Troy have a little scuffle, and it's just Madison pushing over Troy. It just really sucks. This episode just really lets you down. And now moving on to number 9, I have to give this to The Walking Dead Dead Sea Season 1 Episode 5. I think this episode really falls down in so many places. One good aspect of this episode is the Walker King, and they give Maggie something to do. However, I dislike what they do with Negan. I dislike the side characters just being killed off and one of them turned to a villain randomly. Jenny and Maggie's that relationship is annoying. And what really puts this on my list is that I hate that this episode treats all the reveals in this episode as big things. The change to villainy of one character, you can see it coming a mile away. The big reveal that Maggie's lying and that she's using Negan, we knew that. Why was that a big reveal? It's treated like a big reveal at the end of this episode, and it isn't. We could guess it from episode 1. This episode just really annoys me because of those big reveals, which are just so bad, and the episode just thinks it's way cleverer than it actually is. Moving on to number 8, and we have Fear the Walking Dead Season 8 Episode 2, and this episode does have a lot of promise. I really like the cure aspect of this episode, and June is very entertaining. Padre is actually slightly sinister in this episode, and it's the only episode that's actually slightly sinister and scary. This episode deals with the radiation walkers again, which adds that extra threat. However, it's on this list because I do not like Dwight and Sherry's relationship with them breaking up again, and then suddenly get back together in this episode. That really ruins this episode, and the start of this episode really lets you down. It really takes a while to get into the interesting part, and I feel like the pace in this episode is just really hindered by the start and how badly it gets Dwight, Sherry and June together. Moving on to number 7, Fear the Walking Dead Season 8 Episode 1, and this is definitely the weakest premiere we've ever had on Fear. The plot is basically just, we gotta go steal Mo wants to go back, Morgan wants to take Mo back, and then right at the end, Morgan changes his mind and wants to bring back Mo. It is just very annoying. I do like in this episode that we get introduced to Madison very quickly, and that this episode juggles Madison and Morgan as co-leads very well. One character is not being outshunned by the other. They're both as important to the story as each other, which is very well done. However, the reason why this is on the list is because of the lackluster first episode of the season and Mo. Mo is really annoying in this episode and really brings it down, and you just can't have Kim Dickens and Lenny James carrying it, and then you have this person just really dragging them down. It is just so dumb, and I say the writing is a bit iffy at times, especially with Mo, and the dialogue's not the best. It just really makes this episode so hard and cringy to watch. Now moving on to number 6, we have Fear the Walking Dead Dead Sea Season 1 Episode 1. I know some people really like this episode, but me personally, I found this episode really boring. It takes way too long for Maggie and Negan to get the dead city. There is just too much or too little going on at times. I really feel like they just kind of be like, okay, look at the end of The Walking Dead, reset both characters because we want to do the exact same story again on their own spin-off show. It just doesn't really work as a premiere. It's not a good start to the season. The season might be great, but this first episode really lets me down, and I really expected more from episode 1. They take way too long to get to the city, and it doesn't feel like the start of a story. It just feels like a random Walking Dead episode. And if you're making a spin-off, you want that first episode to really feel like the first episode of a story. It just doesn't have that feeling for me. Up next in 5th place is Fear the Walking Dead Season 8 Episode 5. And this episode could have been great if they did Grace's death right. But the problem with this episode and why it's on this list is because of Mo. Mo makes this episode hard to watch, and a lot of dumb things happen in this episode solely because of Mo. They ruined Grace's death. Morgan should have been there when Grace died. And I didn't like how everyone was able to talk over the walkie-talkies and Padre was there. It was just so dumb. So much combat happens off screen. And it's just there to set up Morgan's big final episode, which is quite good. However, to get to that episode, we have Mo being annoying and absolutely ruining this episode. And they absolutely butchered Grace's death. You have that nice I love you moment over the walkie. However, that should have been in person. They ruined this big moment for Morgan and big moment for Grace. You had June, Dwight and Sherry off doing their own thing, which is really annoying. This episode just really annoys me because the writing is just so convenient and bad. Moving up to number 4, and we have Fear the Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 11. And this is the episode where Madison and Troy are stuck together, which is good. However, it is ruined where they try to redeem Troy and then kill him off in the exact same episode, so it makes the episode completely pointless. This episode also has a lot of plot holes, like Troy now knowing where Padre is for no reason, even though in previous episodes he stated he wants to know where Padre is so he could take it over. Just super dumb. Also, they bring Crane back so he can just dump a bunch of knowledge and then die in the worst way possible. It's just a really dumb episode with a lot of random stuff happening here and there. But what really ruins it is the Crane just come back and being the worst villain you ever see in the episode. And then you just kill off Troy. Like, why bother redeeming him? So it has to be here. Up at number 3 is Fear the Walking Dead Season 8 Episode 9, and this is the Sanctuary episode, and the reason why it's so high is because they squandered it. This had the chance and potential to be an amazing episode, just like King County. This could have been their version of King County. However, no. They had this really dumb and convoluted plot, so everyone had to go and get Dwight, make him the leader of Padre. But on this mission, Dove gets shot and there's raiders living at the Sanctuary. So what does Dwight do? Hey, let's go to Alexandria because it'll be safe and we can get Dove and go back. No. Let's head to the Sanctuary where the raiders live and we'll be in danger the entire time. It's just written badly from start to finish. The only good part of this episode was the right at the start where you didn't know how bad this episode was going to be and he goes to Sanctuary for the first time. The Sanctuary set does look good, but that's really the only good thing about this episode. Up next, in 2nd place, is Fear the Walking Dead Season 8 Episode 10. This is the episode where Madison, Daniel, and Tracy go off to try and find Alicia's dead body. However, by the end of this episode, it's right back at the start. Alicia wasn't there, and now Madison's going off to go do it again. It's a very pointless episode, and there's also a big fight in this episode, which we do not see. And this is where it's the most, egregious. It's because apparently Troy's army is just this absolute badasses. They don't care if they live or die. It'd be cool if we actually saw any of that. It just really sucks. This episode is all over the place, and there could have been a cool premise. You could have had all these factions chasing down Tracy when Strand runs off with Tracy and finds Madison. But no, you have everyone just kind of forget about chasing down Tracy. You get everyone talking over walkies. The snow makes no sense if they're in Georgia. This episode just doesn't make sense, and it's just badly written from start to finish, and is borderline hard to watch at times. And I can just keep talking about this episode for ages, but let's cut this short and move over to 1st place. The worst episode of 2023 is Fear the Walking Dead Season 8 Episode 7. This is definitely the worst mid-season premiere we've ever got in the Walking Dead universe. This episode follows Strand and it picks up with him, and the reason why it's so bad is because of how poorly written everything is. This episode has Strand kind of suddenly a good guy, and he's really annoying. And what makes it worse, there are big chunks of this episode which just reuse shots from previous seasons. Right at the start of this episode, there's this maybe 30-second long clip, which is from Season 6. You also have a Season 8 Episode 1 clip of some walkers. This episode feels really cheap. It is way too lengthy with dialogue. Characters are just really annoying and teleporting around. This is where the lack of combat started to get noticeable, where we would see Strand see Daniel coming over and combat's about to happen and Strand will run off into the woods. This episode is just very weak from start to finish, and the only entertaining part of this episode is the ending with Troy and the big reveal. That's the only bit I like, and the only bit I can watch. Every other part of this episode is completely unwatchable. Strand is really bad in this episode, and this is the episode where I felt like Strand should have died in Season 7. I do not like The Stranded Season 8, and this is where he's worst. And that is it for me, so please tell me down below. Do you agree with my list of the top 10 worst episodes of 2023, or do you disagree? And if you disagree, I'll let you know what your thoughts are down below. But that's it for me today, so goodbye, peace out, and I'll see you next time.